All right, ready for another deep dive. This time, we're going to tackle something a lot of you have been asking about IELTS speaking, part one. And to make it even more specific, we're zeroing in on history as a topic. I know you might be thinking, history, piece of cake.
But it's trickier than it seems, right? It's not just knowing the facts. It's about being able to talk about those facts in English conversationally on the spot.
Yeah, you got to be able to think on your feet. It really throws people off because they think they've got it down, but then bam, you're in the exam and suddenly you're blanking on even basic stuff because it's like the pressure gets to you. Exactly. And that's why I'm so pumped about the IELTS podcast we're using for this deep dive. They've got this answer, reason, example structure that they use for their answers, and it's honestly genius. It's not just for IELTS either, I
No,
think.
not at all. It's such a solid way to structure your thoughts in general. Think about it. Even in casual conversation or a work meeting, you don't just state your point and leave it at that, right?
Right. You got to back it up.
You give a reason why it matters. Maybe throw in an example to really drive it home. This is like that, just more formalized.
I love that. Gives your thoughts like scaffolding. Okay, so in the podcast, the hosts, Emma and Sam, they actually use themselves as examples to show how this works. So Emma talks about how she enjoys history more now as an adult,
Ah, yeah, I remember that part.
and she connects it to when she learned about the printing press, which I thought was so smart. It's personal,
Yeah.
it shows off some nice vocab, and it subtly hints at that growth or journey the examiners are always looking for.
It's instead of here's a historical event, it's here's how my understanding of history has changed, which is way more interesting.
And memorable. Okay, Sam's example. He picks the moon landing, a classic choice. But he doesn't stop there. He talks about why he's so drawn to it, human achievement, pushing boundaries technologically. He even mentions a movie he watched about it.
Which is perfect. It's he's not just reciting facts about Apollo 11, he's using it as a jumping off point to talk about these bigger ideas.
And that depth is what the examiners are looking for, right?
Totally. It shows you can think critically, make connections. It's gold.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty, some of the specific tips they give, because they had some real gems in there. They're huge on speaking fluently, even if that means using filler phrases to avoid those awkward silences, which for me was like mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah, I feel that. It's something we do naturally in conversation, but when it comes to something like an exam,
Hmm.
it's we forget we're allowed to do that. But honestly, those little ums and ahs can be lifesavers.
They buy you time to think. They make you sound more natural. It's win-win.
Absolutely. And it makes you sound more like a native speaker, too, which is something they're looking for. Fluency.
Then they talk about topic-specific vocab. Like, don't be afraid to drop in words like civilizations or eras, you know?
Yes. Show off that vocab. It shows you're comfortable talking about history at a more sophisticated level. But of course, it can't sound forced. It's got to flow naturally.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot between accuracy and impressiveness. And the other tip that really resonated with me was paraphrasing.
Oh, paraphrasing. Yeah, that's key.
Don't just repeat the examiner's question word for word. Mix it up. Show them you understand what they're asking.
It's a subtle but powerful way to demonstrate comprehension.
Yeah.
You're not just a robot spitting out memorized answers. You're actually engaging with the question.
You're thinking. Okay, so we've got the structure, the fluency, the vocab, but they also talk a lot about using details and examples to make your answers come alive. It's not just about what happened, it's about why it matters, what it means to you.
And that's where it starts to feel less like an exam and more like a good conversation.
Yeah.
You're sharing your insights, your perspective. It's engaging.
And I think that ties into confidence too, being able to share your thoughts without getting flustered. That's huge.
Well, confidence is key. Even if you're nervous on the inside project, that sense of ease that you've got this, it makes a world of difference.
Absolutely. It's like you're telling yourself, I can do this, and the examiner picks up on that energy.
It's contagious.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think the big question is, how do we actually practice all of this? It feels like a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be boring. There are ways to make it fun.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Think about watching historical documentaries or movies and try summarizing them using the answer, reason, example structure.
Oh, that's good. Turning movie night into study time. And you're practicing your listening skills too.
Exactly. Multitasking at its finest.
Mm.
You could also try having conversations with friends or family about historical topics.
Just get those conversations flowing.
The more you do it, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
And don't be afraid to record yourself speaking, too. I know it can be a little cringy listening back to yourself, but it's so helpful for identifying those areas where you can improve, like your pacing or your pronunciation.
Yeah, it's like having your own personal speech coach right there in your pocket.
You can catch those little things that you might not even notice in the moment.
And the more you practice, the more those aha moments will come where you're like, hey, I'm actually getting the hang of this.
And those little victories are so motivating. They keep you going.
They totally do. And they build your confidence, which, as we said, is essential for acing that speaking exam.
It's like a positive feedback loop. The more you practice, the more confident you get, the better you perform.
Exactly. And remember, all those communication skills you're building for the IELTS, they're not going anywhere after the exam.
They're life skills.
They are. It's an investment in your future, not just a hurdle to overcome.
I love that. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious, what's one takeaway that's really sticking with you? What's something you're going to focus on practicing?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's that idea of turning answers into mini narratives. It's not just reciting facts. It's about weaving a story that pulls the listener in.
Yeah, makes them feel like they're right there with you, experiencing history firsthand.
And you know what? It ties back to that challenge we talked about earlier. Convincing someone who thinks history is irrelevant, why they should care.
Because if you can make it come alive through storytelling, you're doing just that.
You're making it human, relatable.
Okay, so before we move on, I have one final thought-provoking question for you all. Imagine you're talking to someone who thinks history is just a bunch of dusty old dates and battles. What's your most compelling argument for why they should care? And I want you to think beyond the examples we've talked about today. Tap into what truly resonates with you.
Ooh, that's a tough one, but a good one. I think I'd focus on the idea that history is like a conversation across generations. It's about understanding the choices and the struggles, the triumphs of those who came before us, and how those experiences shape the world we live in today.
It's like we're all part of this ongoing human story, and understanding where we came from gives us a better sense of where we might be going.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by understanding the mistakes of the past, we can avoid repeating them in the future.
It's like history gives us a roadmap, not just a rearview mirror. So to everyone listening, take some time to ponder that question. What's your personal case for the importance of history? And when you have your answer, practice articulating it, maybe even try telling a friend. You might be surprised at how passionate and persuasive you can be.
I totally agree. Embrace that curiosity. Keep practicing those communication skills. And remember the ability to talk about history in an engaging way. It's a gift, not just for the IELTS exam, but for life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You've got this. Keep diving deep, and who knows, maybe one day you'll be the expert guiding others through the fascinating world of history. Until next time, happy learning.
It really does. It makes you more believable, more engaging.
It's like you're saying, hey, I know what I'm talking about. Even if you know deep down, you're still a little nervous.
Exactly. And you know what's cool? These skills you're building for the IELTS, they don't just vanish after the exam.
Oh, for sure. Being able to talk about history in a way that people actually want to listen to, that's a valuable skill no matter what you do.
Totally. Think about it, you're at a dinner party, a job interview, even just chatting with friends. Being able to weave in those historical references, it makes you a more well-rounded communicator, more interesting.
It's like having a secret weapon, right? And that answer, reason, example structure, that's not just for IELTS. It's a way to organize your thoughts, period, no matter what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like a framework for clear thinking. Super useful.
Okay, so let's put this into practice. Imagine the examiner asks you, who is your favorite historical figure? How would you approach that using this structure?
All right, so first you answer directly. My favorite historical figure is, boom. Then you explain why. What qualities about this person do you admire? What makes them stand out to you?
And then?
Then you go a specific example that illustrates your point. Maybe it's an achievement of theirs, a character trait, or even like a little anecdote that shows their personality.
Okay, so let's say I was going to go with Marie Curie. I'd say my favorite historical figure is Marie Curie because of her incredible dedication to science. She faced so many challenges, but she never gave up.
Perfect.
Yep.
See, you've got your answer, your reason, and now you just need that example to seal the deal.
Her pioneering research on radioactivity paved the way for cancer treatments that are still used today.
Boom. Nailed it. You've got a clear answer. A compelling reason and a specific example that shows why Marie Curie is important to you.
It's like I'm painting a picture with words instead of just, listing off facts.
Exactly.
Now, what about those broader questions? Right. What if they ask about the importance of history itself? That feels harder to make personal.
Yeah, that one can be tricky,
Yeah.
but you can totally do it. You could start by acknowledging that, yeah, some people will see history as irrelevant, but then you pivot to why it's actually crucial for understanding the present and shaping the future. It's all connected.
Like it's about connecting the dots between the past, the present, and the future, right? Showing how history informs our decisions today helps us avoid making the same mistakes.
Exactly. You could draw on examples from the podcast, like how studying World War II highlights the importance of diplomacy and international cooperation.
Right. Or you could bring in your own examples.
Maybe talk about how learning about past social movements inspires you to work for positive change in your own community, something like that.
And that's where those details and examples really shine. It's not enough to just say history's important. You got to back it up with concrete examples that demonstrate its impact, its relevance to our lives.
Think of it like you're building a case for the importance of history. You need evidence, a clear argument, and you need to present it persuasively.
Well, it's like being a history lawyer arguing for the significance of the past. I love that.
Exactly. And just like a good lawyer, you want to be prepared to address counter-arguments.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Like, imagine someone says, history is just boring dates and dead people. What would you say to that?
Good question.
You need a thoughtful response, ready? Highlighting the lessons we learn, the stories that inspire us, the connections to our own lives.
Right. It's not about memorizing facts. It's about being able to engage in a dialogue about history, even if it gets a little challenging. Which brings us back to that emphasis on fluency and sounding natural. You don't want to sound like you're reading from a textbook, right?
No way. It's got to be conversational. Use those filler phrases. Vary your sentence structure. Let your personality come through.
It's about having a conversation, showing that you're comfortable expressing yourself in English, even if you need a moment to gather your thoughts.
And those little pauses and filler phrases, they're like bridges that connect your ideas, create a natural flow. Don't be afraid to use them.
Bridges to fluency. Okay, so we've talked about the structure, the details, the confidence, the fluency. It feels like a lot to juggle. Any advice on how to actually practice all of this?
Practice is key, but it doesn't have to be a chore. Find ways to make it fun and engaging. Like, what if you watch historical documentaries or movies, and then try to summarize them using the answer, reason, example structure?
Oh, that's a great idea. It's like turning movie night into an IELTS prep session. And you're practicing your listening skills at the same time.
Exactly. You could also try having conversations with friends or family about historical topics. Just chat.
The more you do it, the more natural it'll feel.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to record yourself speaking too. I know it can be a little cringy listening back, but it's so helpful for identifying areas where you can improve. Like, oh, I'm speaking too fast, or I need to work on my pronunciation of this word.
Yeah, it's like having your own personal speech coach. You can catch those little things that you might not even notice in the moment.
And the more you practice, the more those aha moments will come where you're like, hey, I'm actually getting the hang of this.
Those little victories are so important. They keep you motivated.
They totally do. And they build your confidence, which, as we said, is a key ingredient for success on the IELTS.
It's like a positive feedback loop. The more you practice, the more confident you become, the better you perform.
And remember, all those communication skills you're honing for the IELTS, they're not going anywhere after the exam.
They're valuable life skills.
They are. It's an investment in your future, not just a hurdle to overcome.
I love that perspective. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious. What's one takeaway that's really sticking with you? What's something you're going to focus on practicing?
It's tough to pick just one, but I think for me it's the power of personalizing those history answers.
Yeah.
You know, like we were saying, making them relatable, like mini stories, because that's what makes people care.
It's what makes it stick with them instead of just dates and names floating around in their head.
Exactly. And you know, it kind of goes back to that challenge we talked about before.
Yeah.
How do you convince someone who thinks history is irrelevant that they should actually care?
Ooh, good point. It's like you're not just giving them information, you're giving them an experience.
Right.
Okay, so before we wrap up this whole deep dive, I want to leave everyone with one final thought-provoking question. Imagine you're talking to someone and they think history is just a bunch of, boring old dates and battles. What's your most compelling argument for why they should care? And I want you to really think beyond the examples we've talked about today, like what truly resonates with you? What makes history matter to you?
That's a good one. Um, I think I'd probably focus on the idea that history is kind of like a conversation across generations. It's like we get to learn from the choices and the struggles, the triumphs of all these people who came before us. And it helps us understand like how all of that shaped the world we live in today. We're part of that story.
It's like we're all connected, and understanding where we came from it helps us figure out where we might be going, or where we want to go, maybe.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by learning from the mistakes of the past, we can avoid repeating them in the future, right?
It's like history gives us a roadmap, not just a rear view mirror. So, to everyone listening, I really want you to take some time to think about that question. What's your personal case for the importance of history? And once you have your answer, practice saying it out loud. Try explaining it to a friend. You might be surprised how passionate and persuasive you can be. And hey, you'll be one step closer to acing that IELTS speaking exam, too.
I
Yeah.
love that. Embrace that curiosity, guys.
Yeah.
Keep practicing those communication skills. And always remember that the ability to talk about history, to make it come alive for other people, that's a gift. It's not just for the IELTS exam, it's for life.
Beautifully said. Couldn't agree more. All right, everyone, that's a wrap on this deep dive. You've got this. Keep diving deep, keep learning, and who knows, maybe one day you will be the expert sharing your passion for history with the world. Until next time, happy learning.